Full folks.
Hey, you know what? If you make a connection with those kids, if they become Major League Baseball players, you can be their agent.
Their sports agent, right?
Exactly.
Good,
I mean,
good thinking, John.
Why not diversify? Instead of just you don't do slip and fall stuff anyway, but
not at all.
employment law. I mean,
Right.
you could
and
get
special needs planning law.
right, and
Yeah.
you could get 20 kids, 20
A whole team.
clients all at once. I mean, it would take about 8 years, but
Other than that, we'd be in good shape.
we're always we're always prospecting
It's exciting.
for
No,
new
they were.
business.
I'm proud of them. They did a great job.
So you've got a pretty exciting weekend coming up, and it's the cameras are going to be here, and you're going to be
Cameras are
here. You're
gonna
going to
be
be
here?
doing your show Saturday.
Right.
Tell us all about it.
So, John, for a while now, I've been involved, obviously, in special needs planning and special needs law because I have a little girl, Sophia, who has Down syndrome. She's also legally blind. So, about 12 years ago, I became vested into the special needs community. We've got 1 in 5 folks living in this country with some form of a disability.
That's 20%.
That's 20%. 20%. And when it comes to autism right now, autism has been the fastest growing developmental disability in the world. So it wasn't too long ago that we had 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 68.
Is it being overdiagnosed?
I don't think it's being overdiagnosed. I think that it is a growing concern and a growing fact that there are 1 in 68 children that are being diagnosed with autism on the spectrum. 40% of them, John, are nonverbal. So when they're diagnosing, they are looking at, of course, brain functioning. And autism is just not a typical normal brain function. And so you've got cognitive impairment, you've got impairment with regard to social interaction, you've got impairment with regard to communication. And so there are significant symptoms that come along with that. And again, 40%, of course, nonverbal, so they're not speaking. And so the idea...
So they really can't tell you what's wrong.
Exactly.
Or how they feel.
And so most of this has come about, again, in the last maybe 2 or 3 decades, in which the numbers are just staggering. Some studies out of South Korea believe it's 1 in 38. And there are predictions that say, John, if we don't figure out what's going on with this piece, because again, it's the fastest growing developmental disability, but the most underfunded in terms of research, that by 2025, it could be 1 in 2. So how does half the world population take care of the other half? That doesn't make sense. But part of what we've been doing with Lady Law and our outreach in terms of bringing the message to people that don't really understand what autism is to make them aware and then move forward to acceptance. So we've been involved with the Foundation for Autism Acceptance for about a year now, which was a foundation created by Stacy Levy, and her son Jagger has autism, and he was the one that was singing at the middle school in Shrewsbury, and that's gotten like 10 million hits on YouTube already.
Okay, you say acceptance.
Right.
Acceptance of the person by the community, or acceptance of the diagnosis for the parent? What do you mean?
That's great, John. Great question. I think it's acceptance by both. I mean, first there's acceptance by the parent. Autism costs parents $60,000 a year just in terms of the cost care. And then it's a lifelong plan that they have to make in order to support their child.
And it is lifelong. This is not something that they outgrow for a period of time.
There's no cure for autism. There's only one scientific method that is proven to treat autism, and that's applied behavior analysis. So enter Nassim Audi, who is CEO and founder of Autism Behavioral Services. He's been working to really bring the message out there. And we've got B.F. Skinner's daughter, Julie Vargas. I'm sure you've heard of B.F. Skinner. Dr. Julie Vargas, also a behaviorist, understands why it is that autism needs to be treated with applied behavior analysis. Again, the only scientifically proven method to treat autism. So on Saturday, we've got the most amazing show. Arani, I'm sorry, I got her last name for a minute. Rima Arani. Apologize. Rima Arani, she is an award-winning filmmaker, John. She's won at Cannes, she's won at Hollywood. She's doing a full documentary now on autism, which is just amazing. She's flown in from Lebanon. She's flown out to California. She's interviewing parents and people out there that are diagnosed, talking about what the parents' struggles are, and she'll be here in studios filming along with the CEO of Autism Society of America, and so we're pretty excited.
So this is not just a home movie thing.
No, she is a a real award winning. She's done over 50 different films, and she is extremely significant in her field.
And what was your entree-vous into this? How did they find you, or how did you find them, Allison?
Well, I have been very vested in the autism community for a couple of years now, and they had asked me at some point to be on the board, the Foundation for Autism Acceptance Worldwide, so I'm serving as a board member on that foundation. And this allowed me to meet up with a lot of really wonderful people like V Versatile Meadows. He's a rapper. He's from California. He'll be in the studios too. I've actually interviewed him before. He was the first person, he's what we call the good rapper. No swearing, no cursing, nothing of that nature. He was the first person ever to write a song about autism called Born This Way. And he won $50,000 in the Indie.com challenge for the Autism Society of America. So we've got good folks getting together to do good things.
Great. In case you just joined us, folks, this is the Jordan Levy Show on WTAG. My name is John DePietro. Our special guest, I should say very special guest this half hour, is attorney Allison Cohen. And Allison is going to be involved in a which will be probably released in a year or so.
Right.
By the time they put it all
Yes,
together.
it's going to be screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2018, so we're pretty excited.
Okay. The autism thing, you heard a lot about it when Doug Flutie started
Yes.
talking about it. But before, autistic kids, they didn't have a label for them. There was just, they're slow.
Right.
Is that kind of how it was?
Yes, and again, how many, think about growing up, John, as a child. How many children did you know, were you aware of, that had autism? I
No.
really can't remember
No.
any.
No.
Again, I have a little girl that has Down syndrome. I knew Down syndrome children. I didn't know a lot, but I did know children that had Down syndrome, but I did not know what autism was. Then we all saw the movie, if you remember, Rain Man, and that was our first introduction into what somebody with autism might look like. And now, with the numbers again, when you're talking 1 in 68, you know somebody. You know somebody who knows somebody.
And you know somebody, but even you might not even know that they are
That they have
involved in
autism, exactly.
Now, let me ask you a technical question. This Asperger is also considered but that's not. I think most of the time when people think of autism, they think of a quote unquote slow person.
Right.
Okay. Asperger's, they're probably not socially with it, but they're brilliant.
They are brilliant. And of course, Asperger's is now part of this whole broad spectrum. So it is a spectrum. It's diagnosed all together on under one umbrella. But again, if you look at the idea that 40% of these kids are nonverbal, they're not speaking, John, that's a significant part of those children that are being diagnosed on the spectrum. And so Asperger's is a small part at the other end. And yes, they still do have trouble with social interaction. So I know a lot of children that have Asperger's, and that piece is still difficult for them.
So what age should parents express concern with if they're not infant, but their child, their toddler, is not speaking? There must be an age. Is it 2? Is it 2.5?
Right. So
that they should start getting testing.
I mean, it's a great question. So by the time a child's 3 years old, John, the pediatrician knows pretty much at that point whether or not the child has autism, because they're now gearing questions towards parents to make sure that they are looking for specific things to say, is your child showing this normal development and this kind of growth? What's the communication skills? How are they socially interacting? And so pediatricians are well aware now of what it means to have a child with autism. They say that every 20 minutes, John, every 20 minutes, a family is receiving a diagnosis of autism. So again, this is, a serious situation. It's something that affects everybody. It doesn't matter your race, your religion, your national origin, color, creed, handicap, or your socioeconomic status. That's the prevalency of it.
Now, excluding Down syndrome,
Yes.
when you quote unquote look at a youngster who is not a Down syndrome child,
Right.
visually, do you see anything that tips them off as
Well, it depends on there's a saying, actually, Nassim Audi had told me this. He's the CEO and founder of Autism Behavioral Services, and they've been doing some wonderful work for quite a while now. He said, if you've met one child with autism, then you've met one child with autism. Every child is different. So,
Different.
you can't really round up to say, well, I clearly know
Certain.
that this person has autism, but there are standard behaviors that they might display that allows people to see that there is something visually going on with that child. And so how do we take that piece, John, and bring it to the level of acceptance? Because that's what this movement is about. really going from autism awareness to autism acceptance. And I say, get on board because the train is leaving the station. And I think you saw the pie in the face that I did with Jim Polito. When we put the pie in the face and people said that don't have children with autism, well, why did you decide to do the whipped cream pie in the face? Well, they have a different reaction to the sensory textures of things. So whipped cream and that idea of it being in their face, or just anything that they touch and that they feel, their clothing, certain things that they hear, sounds, it makes a big impact on them. So that has been going viral in the last 3 weeks, which is kind of exciting.
You mentioned some numbers, Allison.
Yeah, we have like 640,000 views right now of me taking that huge turkey pan where it was kind of a little bit of a hoax because we had the small little whipped cream pan inside there and putting it in Jim's face. So
on the radio, you can get away with that.
Yeah, well,
even
no,
though you were on TV.
We were on
You were
TV,
on TV
so
as well.
it was filmed and it's been shown, and it's
Okay,
Klaus
so
got a good pie in his face. Yes.
What is the result that you hope to achieve by this activity with the filming?
Right. So again, if you have awareness leads to this idea of acceptance, because we've got to all get around the fact that the numbers are staggering, John.
How do you define acceptance, though, Allison? What do you mean by
That's
that?
a great question. I mean, if you look at children from many years ago and how they were being raised, issues for bullying obviously always existed, but the bullying could have taken place through any socioeconomic dynamic or through any group. But what sort of turned out now with children with special needs is they were subject to a lot of bullying, very specifically targeted. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that people understand that if a child has certain behaviors, there may be an underlying diagnosis behind
Reason
those.
for it. They're not just a bad kid.
Exactly.
Or being disobedient.
Right. And
kind
so
of
if
thing.
you see a child in the store, you see a child in the movie theater, or wherever you see the child, there's got to be a little bit more level of compassion, of empathy to say, look, there are things that are happening now, with these children. And again, we don't know what the reason is, John. There's no research to this point that understands why it is that a child is diagnosed with autism.
How about heredity?
There's no, as far as I know, as in this moment in time, John, there is absolutely no unequivocal answer as to why it is that a child is diagnosed with autism. Again, it is discovered by the time the child's 3 years old. There is no answer. That's why the fact that it is the fastest growing developmental disability in the world and the most underfunded, to me is concerning.
So how do you change that paradigm so that people understand that this is not just one kid in the corner?
Right, exactly. Well, you get people like Rima Irani, who is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, to get out and do what she's doing, flying out from Lebanon, going to LA, meeting with these folks, coming up here to Boston, standing here in the studios on Saturday to meet with people that have been doing groundbreaking work. We've got Scott Badesh, he's the president and the CEO of Autism Society of America. So you've got groups out there like the Foodie Foundation that are trying to bring awareness. But with people on the level of Rima Irani, I feel that we will take it to the next level of how do we go forward and understand that this is something that the population needs to face. As a community, we all need to get around it. We need to move from awareness to acceptance, and we need to navigate these waters together.
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 That's the important word.
Yes, together.
We've got a minute left before we got to take a break, but are there instances of families with more than one child being diagnosed?
Another great question. Yes, in fact, there are families that might have 2 or 3 children that are diagnosed on the spectrum. Does that give us any insight into whether it's hereditary, whether it's environmental based on the foods we eat? Obviously there's still groups of folks out there that believe that it might be related to immunizations. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and unfortunately there's nobody at this point in time that have come up with an answer as to why it is that this number is growing in staggering terms. So it's incredibly prevalent, and we need to put our collective minds together to figure it out.
Allison, I know it's impossible to give a lawyer the admonition saying, give us a short answer. So I've got a heavy question for you. I'll give it to you right now, and then please answer it when we come back from the break. But is this an epidemic? And Allison Cohen is going to think for a little bit on that question, and we'll be back with more of attorney Allison Cohen, the host of Legalese on WTAG. This is the Jordan Levy Show. My name is John DePietro. I stopped a little bit. What is my name? Is John DePietro. And we'll be back right after these important messages.